how to build insane Death Star delts. First thing that I noticed very effective was heavy lateral raises and drop sets. Just the combination of heavy compound movements, heavy laterals, and driving as much blood into the delt. I progressed the most when I did that. Having a dedicated shoulder workout, it's not necessary. It's probably worth doing if you have weak delts. Making sure you hit all heads of the delt, like the front, the lateral, the back. A lot of people, they just do presses and lateral raises and they don't realize there's a head on the back. That's really important to hit. So make sure you do some sort of movement, at least one movement for rear delts before you leave the gym on your shoulder day. So make sure you have a front movement, lateral movement, rear movement. That's how you ensure you hit it from all angles. Androgen response is going to be a big determining factor if you're doing this the enhanced way. Of course, there's an androgen dependent genetic response context to this as well, but in general, the stuff I mentioned before is stuff you can do to maximize whatever genetics you have. Obviously, the first thing everyone's gonna, all the trolls are gonna jump to the comment section, trend belongs, that's all it is trend. And I'm not gonna argue with the fact that androgen response is largely going to dictate whether you have, ridiculously developed delts, because obviously there is a hypothesis that the androgen receptors, there's a greater density in the delt. I've seen the science backing that up in, I believe it was the traps. I did another video on that before. I have yet to see clinical evidence proving this in the delts, but I'm not gonna argue that's probably somewhat true to some extent. But anyways, as far as like what I did in particular, first thing that I noticed was very effective was heavy lateral raises and drop set. So heavy laterals in particular, focusing on progressive overload. And then in addition to that, I used to do something called surfing the rack. And it was basically a way to, I would hit my compound movements as well as my heavy laterals and stuff like that and focus on gaining as much strength as possible. But then in addition to that, I would do these sets where I would, either do drop sets or just surf the rack, which is essentially just a very big multiple set drop set where you would just like go down the rack in weight from the heaviest that you're using to the lightest dumbbell on the rack essentially, and just like burn out the muscle with as many reps as you can do until failure with each of those respective weights until you get to the lowest one. And just the combination of heavy compound movements, heavy laterals, and driving as much blood into the delt by the end of the workout, you'd at least focus on some sort of pump movement essentially. You kind of hit you check off all the boxes before you leave the gym essentially. I progressed the most when I did that, and I definitely think there is something to be said about ensuring your workout isn't just strictly focused on strength and it's not just strictly focused on pump, and it kind of has a mix of the two in there. I think there's definitely a lot of merit to that as far as leaving your ego at the door.